Appalachian granny women. The mountains hold their secrets close, but none are more complex than the women who ruled the hollers. Long before pavement reached the ridges, long before the nearest hospital was less than a 3-day ride, the ultimate authority on life and death belonged to one figure, the granny woman. Welcome to Legends from the Holler, where we chase the smoke through the chimneys and listen to the whispers of the mountain folk. This is the true story of the granny women of Appalachia, the fiercest, wisest, and most essential figures in mountain history. She was the community's midwife, pharmacist, and spiritual counselor, all wrapped into one powerful presence. Her hands were stained green from the spring's first harvest, purple from the summer's berries, and yellow from the goldenrod. She knew which plants would ease labor pains and which would stop a bleeding wound. But her power was double-edged. In the same breath, mountain folk would speak of her wisdom and her potential for magic. Was she a blessed healer using God's own garden? Or was she a cunning woman practicing the dark arts? To the outside world, she was a relic. To the mountain people, she was survival itself. Ever wondered who you'd call if the nearest doctor was days away, or cost more money than you'd see in a year? In the rugged, isolated mountains of Appalachia, the answer was simple. You'd call the granny woman. Now, granny wasn't just about being a grandmother, it was a title, a badge of honor earned through years of experience and wisdom. She was the doctor, the pharmacist, the midwife, and the counselor, all rolled into one indispensable figure for her community. When early settlers, a mix of Scots-Irish, English, German, and African peoples, pushed into the remote Appalachian ranges, they left the world of established medicine far behind. Doctors were a luxury few could afford or even find. So, into this healthcare vacuum stepped the women of the mountains. They learned to rely on what they had, the earth beneath their feet, and the knowledge passed down through generations. What makes the granny woman tradition so fascinating is that it's a true American melting pot of wisdom. It's a unique fusion of three powerful streams of knowledge. First, you have European folklore. The settlers brought with them ancient herbal remedies from the British Isles and Germany, cures and tonics their own ancestors had used for centuries. Think poultices, teas, and tinctures made from familiar garden herbs. Second, and absolutely crucial, was the wisdom they learned from their Native American neighbors, particularly the Cherokee. They weren't just neighbors, they were teachers. The granny women learned to identify and use the powerful medicinal properties of native Appalachian plants, barks, and roots. This wasn't just borrowing, it was a deep integration of local ecology into their practice. They learned which plants could soothe a fever, which could stop bleeding, and which could ease the pain of childbirth. And third, they incorporated African American traditions. Enslaved or freed people brought their own rich heritage of healing, often involving root work, spiritual practices, and charms. This added another layer of depth, blending the physical and the spiritual, recognizing that healing the body often meant healing the spirit too. This incredible blend of European, Native American, and African knowledge created a system of folk medicine that was incredibly practical and deeply localized. A granny woman in Kentucky might use a slightly different set of plants than one in North Carolina, because she worked with what her specific mountain valley provided. They were masters of their environment. They knew the secret language of the forest, the right time to harvest a plant under the full moon, and how to prepare it to unlock its healing power. They delivered the babies, set the broken bones, soothed the colicky infants, and sat with the dying. They were the lifelines of the hollers, and their impact was immense. As late as the 1920s and 30s in parts of eastern Kentucky, official records show that midwives, most of whom were granny women, outnumbered licensed doctors by a staggering 14-1. Think about that. For every one doctor, there were 14 of these experienced, community-trusted women. And they didn't do it for the money. They might charge a few dollars for delivering a baby. But more often than not, payment was a bushel of beans, a freshly baked pie, a mended fence, or simply the gratitude and respect of their neighbors. They were an essential part of a barter economy woven into the very fabric of mountain life. The granny woman wasn't just a healer. She was a pillar of the community, a keeper of ancient knowledge, and a symbol of resilience and ingenuity. She represents a time when healing was personal, spiritual, and rooted in the land itself. And while the world has changed, their legacy reminds us of the profound power that lies in community, tradition, and the wisdom of nature. The granny woman was something far more practical, far more powerful. She was the pharmacist of the forest, the doctor of the mountains. Her power didn't come from magic books. It came directly from the soil, from the green and growing things all around her. For these women, the forest was a living pharmacy. They knew that the cure for most common sicknesses could be found within a day's walk. Their hands, stained with earth and herbs, were the tools of their trade. They were known as yarb doctors or root diggers, and their craft was a meticulous science of harvesting, drying, and preparing remedies from nature's bounty. For generations, their wisdom was often brushed aside as old wives' tales. But here's the fascinating part. Modern science is now catching up, validating the knowledge these women held for centuries. Got a headache or a fever? Forget the medicine cabinet. A granny woman would brew you a cup of willow bark tea. It sounds simple, but willow bark contains a compound called salicin. Does that sound familiar? It should. Salicin is the natural origin of the active ingredient in aspirin. They were using nature's pain reliever long before it came in a bottle. It was renowned for its amazing ability to speed up the healing process, helping to mend tissues and bone. It wasn't magic. It was an understanding of a plant's powerful properties. As the cold months approached, every granny woman's pantry would be stocked with jars of deep, purple elderberry syrup. This wasn't just a sweet treat. They knew it was a potent shield against colds and flu. Today, we know why. Elderberries are packed with vitamins C and A and are widely recognized for their powerful immune-boosting effects. The tradition they preserved is now a staple in modern health stores. They were also masters of the poultice, a technique for drawing out toxins. If you were unfortunate enough to get a snake bite or a painful bee sting, she would crush up the leaves of the common plantain, yes, that weed you see in your lawn, and apply it to the wound. The plant's compounds would help draw out the venom and soothe the inflammation. But their role went far beyond just dispensing herbs. They were the community's general practitioner. When a child fell and broke an arm, it was the granny woman who would carefully set the bone. When someone suffered a bad burn, she would clean it and apply a soothing salve, sometimes made from bear grease, to protect the skin and promote healing. And for that cough that just wouldn't quit, she had a syrup, a rich concoction of honey and wild cherry bark that could soothe the most irritated throat. These women were pillars of their communities. They were botanists, chemists, and doctors all rolled into one. They didn't have fancy degrees or sterile labs. They had generations of passed down knowledge, a deep respect for the land, and an unwavering commitment to caring for their people. Their legacy is a powerful reminder that sometimes the most profound wisdom is rooted in the earth beneath our feet. Healer or witch? That's the question that forged a legend deep in the Appalachian Mountains. When modern medicine hit a wall, when a fever just wouldn't break, an ailment wouldn't heal, or a string of bad luck felt like more than just coincidence, folks turned to the granny woman. And this is where her work crossed the line from herbal remedies into the realm of folk magic. To the mountain people, magic wasn't just one thing. It had two sides. First, you had the bad witches. These were the ones who cast curses, put haints or restless spirits on a house, or intentionally caused sickness. They were feared, and for good reason. On the other side, you had the granny women, the healers. You could call them good witches or cunning women. Their power was seen as a force for good, a divine gift used to undo the dark spells cast by others. Her spiritual healing was just as trusted, if not more so, than her knowledge of plants. Take, for example, the practice of talking out fire. If someone had a terrible burn or a dangerously high fever, A granny woman might use specific chants or prayers, often reciting Bible verses, to literally talk the fire out of the affliction. It was believed her words had the power to cool the heat and soothe the pain where ointments failed. Another incredible ability was stopping bleeding. A granny woman might recite a specific verse from the book of Ezekiel in the Bible over a wound to command the blood to stop. Or she might use what's called sympathetic magic. For a persistent nosebleed, she might tie a lead weight or a specific type of key around the person's neck. The idea was that the weight or the locking action would magically transfer to the bleeding, stopping it in its tracks. Protection was a huge part of her work. She was the community's spiritual guardian. To ward off sickness and evil spirits, she might create an asafoetida bag. This was a small pouch filled with a pungent mix of roots and herbs worn around the neck. The strong, stinky smell was believed to repel not just germs but also malevolent forces. To protect a home, she'd instruct the family to place salt in the four corners of each room and across the windows. This created a protective barrier that haints and bad spirits couldn't cross. These practices were a fascinating and powerful blend of everything that shaped the mountains: deep-rooted Christian faith, fragments of Native American tradition, and age-old European folk superstition. This unique combination is what solidified her role. She wasn't just a midwife or an herbalist. She was a figure of immense spiritual power. She stood on the boundary line, the very edge between the natural world we see and the invisible spirit world, and this is what made her so compelling. She was both revered and feared. People sought her out for her life-saving knowledge, her gentle hands, and her comforting words. But they also respected her power with a sense of awe, knowing she dealt with forces that most people couldn't understand, let alone control. Was she a healer? Absolutely. Was she a witch? Too many? She was the only kind that mattered, the good kind. She was the light against the darkness, the wisdom in the wild, the living legend of the mountains. The rise of paved roads, the influx of federal public health nurses, and the eventual accessibility of modern hospitals slowly dimmed the light of the granny woman by the mid-20th century. Her methods were often dismissed as simple superstition, but her legacy endures. The knowledge lives on. Many of the folk remedies she championed, elderberry, willow bark, and ginger, are now mainstream wellness products. The spirit of resilience. The granny woman represents the fierce, self-reliant, and resourceful spirit of Appalachian culture. She kept the communities alive when no one else would. The modern revival today. A resurgence of herbalism and a renewed respect for regional traditions are bringing her wisdom back into the light. Recognizing her as the true medical hero of the holler, she was not merely a healer, she was a cultural anchor, a bridge between the wilderness and the home. The granny woman was the most powerful legend Appalachia ever birthed. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the true legends from the holler. If you want to hear more of the hidden stories and deep folklore of the mountain regions, please hit that like button and subscribe. Until the next moon rises over the hollows and the next story begins to whisper, keep a lantern lit and always stay safe.